Hi, congratulations. You've completed the course, and now we're going to talk about what you've learned and how to apply it in writing your own applications. So what have we learned? We've learned object-oriented programming using the Objective-C programming language. We've learned something about Objective-C, and now we're able to apply that knowledge to write our own applications. We've learned some of the important design patterns used in iOS development, such as Model View Controller and Target Action, and delegation. We've also learned about classes and objects, of course, and we've learned about categories and extensions. In other words, Objective-C kinds of tools that we can use to extend what already exists. We have learned how to develop, in short, interactive touchscreen applications for the iPhone. So now it's time to apply your knowledge in the future. Some ideas for this are to, first of all, have a plan for taking your ideas from paper to app. Take that plan and formalize it using specific goals and milestones. Diagram out, draw pictures of how the parts of your app will fit together and use good, sound Model View Controller design. Keep the interfaces of your classes small. And by this I mean two things. First of all, don't have a lot of properties and methods in your classes. And secondly, keep the joins between classes kind of to a minimum. And the tip here really is many smaller classes in your application are better than a few big classes. And this is especially true of your data model. Finally, don't start coding until you have a good design in place. This is probably the single most important rule. We all have the instinct to just go straight to the keyboard and start writing code. I'll tell you from experience, the longer you spend just graphing out your classes and thinking of how they'll fit together and the interfaces between them, the less time you'll spend recoding and redesigning when you start to code in Xcode. So here are some tips, some detailed tips on how to accomplish all of this. When writing our application components, try to make them as independent as from one another as possible. And by this I mean your model classes really should be very independent of your view controllers and views. You should be able to take a data model out of one application and drop it into another application with very few changes to it. And this, of course, promotes reusability because of what I just said. A well-written model can be reused in many applications. Keep the individual classes, especially of your model, small and focused on one thing. It's better, again, to have many small classes, each focusing on a single aspect of that model, than to have a few large classes that try to do too much. Another thing to do is to use inheritance. Start with more general versions of the model that maybe don't have a lot of properties and methods, and then subclass them to add functionality to the model. When we start developing a new application, start with the idea, start with a couple of questions. What specifically is the application? Very basic question. And what data does it operate on? And the answer to those questions is the model. And with this in mind, then, once you have a good idea of the model, then you can begin to draft the user interface. Now remember, the focus of an application for the user should be not on the bling or not on the shiny user interface. It should really be on what the data is that the user is operating on. So whether we follow an iterative methodology or an agile development environment or even a life cycle, kind of a waterfall methodology, really all successful projects share a couple of initial attributes. The first thing is a complete and well thought out plan of a whole application. Get the big picture, set out some design goals, and then write a very realistic plan of execution with assigned dates and milestones and timelines by which those milestones will be completed. This will save you a lot of work during the development process. Don't start writing code again until you know where you're going. And I say this again because it's probably the very most important rule, if there are rules here. This is the most important thing to keep in mind. Don't start writing code. Don't start coding until you have a plan. The first line of code you write should be the model. So write up your model. Test that model, and test it and retest it and throw it input that you have no thought that the user might be able to throw it. Try to break the model because you're going to base everything else in the application around this model. If you don't have a good model, your application won't be good. So test the model using log statements and printfs and things like that to ensure that the given inputs yield expected outputs. After you have the model done and tested, this is not saying that you won't go back and tweak the model, but after you have a good solid model, then begin working on the user interface. And finally, remember that in iOS, views and view controllers are very tightly bound. We write code in a view controller, but typically the view is an XML file in a storyboard or in a zip file. So the view and the view controller really are written simultaneously. So get that model first, and then do your views and your view controllers. And remember that use the highest level connection in your view controller hierarchy to to instantiate the model as a whole. Don't instantiate that model from a bunch of different view controllers. Try to have a single point, a single controller that goes out to the model, and then just shuffle up your code to that controller to communicate between the model, which is the data of the application, and the views, which are the user interface. I appreciate you taking this course, and thank you very much.